The Rosary of the Philosophers on the Flower of Alkemia. By Master Arnold de Villanova. Book approved true treasure of treasures, Rosary of the Philosophers, and secret very large secret on the right composition of natural philosophy. For which every divine thing by accidental composition is reduced and returned to the perfect sun and the perfect moon. And this book is called the Rosary, because it is extracted and taken briefly from the books of the philosophers, in which, God very first and right experience of true work testimonies, nothing is occult, not hidden, not in him is superfluous thing, not diminished thing. But this is only necessary to complement our work. And know that this book is generally divided into theory and practice. Theoretical monster and teaches how to understand science. And practice monster and teach to open the understanding and to better give voice to my right doctrine and what I want to clarify. This is a book I have divided into various chapters, because it is a just and right thing that no one should be bored, should not be bored, or be eager to pursue and investigate the highest and sovereign natural process of the things from which they arise. Will wish to contract the sovereign effect. And also we proceed with double understandings with the utmost confidence expected by the sovereign study of my things which thereafter will be declared. Therefore, no one should despise and encircle the grievance and the final sovereign medicine of the things which show them and teach them to do, which medicine adorns and makes people honor by good customs and enriched by true benefits, stifles and shelters every man of poverty, and all bodily health is preserved and thus kept more fully. I will talk about it at the end of my treatise. And note here that, if you have been lazy in reading the books, preparing and putting things together will not be possible quickly. Because the book works the memory and the memory gives understanding to open, and a sermon explains another sermon. And what you find less in one book, in another book you find it completely accomplished. Because machine cannot if to enter into practice who has not first studied theory. This is a book that I compiled and called the Rosary, because it is abbreviated and a brief treatment of all the books of philosophers, the best that I have been able to prove by right natural experience. And to better convey what I have done and approved and what I want to say, I will divide this book into various chapters and let you know that in this science or art are two books which I will put and order by chapters, everything in order. Announcement of the chapters. First book. And the first chapter will be how one must ask the philosophers to read the books. The second chapter will declare the generation of metals in their ores. The third chapter will declare how quicksilver is the mother of all metals. The quarter will declare how quicksilver is the perfection of the generation of all metals. The fifth will declare how estranged sulfur is living sulfur and the imperfection of other precious things, and how it is not good to put into this art. The sema will declare how quicksilver contains within itself its own white and purified sulfur. The septism chapter will declare how it is a great stone of the philosophers. Eightism will declare and tell and teach what matter the great stone dictates to the philosophers. Novism will declare how it is impossible to compose and make stone dictated by so much metal material without adding anything else. The second will declare and teach what is the first work of the philosophers, and yet will show how the saying of Aristotle can be understood: all masters of alchemy know a species, that is to say a body of metal, not capable of being transmuted into another species. It looks like other metal. The 11th will declare and teach what can be the great stone to philosophers and what operations it is to make the elixir accomplished. Second book. Now I will say below the chapters of the second book. The first is the chapter which declares the conversions of the elements and how the dictated stone is divided into 4 regimens. And very first of the first regime that is first dissolved in water. The second chapter is and orders the duplication of mercury. The fourth chapter is a repetition and recapitulation of the first regimen. The fifth is from the second regiment of the stone that is washed. The second explains how the stone must be divided by the 4 elements. That is to say, to restore the substance of water, air, earth and fire. Septism clarifies how one must prepare the first element, that is to say water. Atheism teaches how one must purge the second element, namely air. Novism teaches how it must and can extract oil from all metal bodies. The earthquake shows what difference there can be between water and air. The 11th is a monster and teaches how fire and earth should be combined. The 12th recapitulates the entire 2nd regiment. The tricime if declared of the 3rd regiment of the stone, that is to reduce and return the moist sea in the dry earth. Quatercism if taught the way in which the link must return. The 15th if teaches the way of sublimating and whitening the earth. The 7th if teaches in what manner the white sulfur which is processed from this stone is made red. The 17th century teaches why the earth sublimates itself. The 18th recapitulates the entire 3rd regiment. The 19th order of the quarter regiment of stone, which regiment teaches to fix by saying what fixed thing is necessary to fix, that is to say who wants to fix. The 20th says and teaches that the P of leaven must overcome the P of sulfur. The 21st monster and teaches the uses and benefits of the magisterium. The 22nd teaches in what manner the quantity of things which are involved in composing the elixir must be preserved. The 23rd monster shows how the worker who has failed in this work must and can amend his failure so that his work is not lost. The 24th chapter teaches the way of keeping the points of the materials as for the year fixed. The 25th century teaches how to fix and compose the white elixir. The 26th century teaches the way of returning the air to the white elixir. The 27th century teaches the way of surrounding white. The 28th century teaches how to compose red elixir with gold. The 29th century teaches how the multiplication of medicines takes place. The 30th monster chapter how and what must be handled is by solution and sublimation. The 31st teaches how one should understand solution and sublimation. The 32 teaches how one should project the elixir. The 33 and the last chapter so monstrous by recapitulation and brief repetition of all the work of the ministry. But I will say later, returning to my 2nd chapter to clarify everything better if, as I promised, how right nature opens naturally, continuously and assiduously the metallic bodies in its own mining. Truly all the fusible, or leakable, names are naturally made open by the course of nature of quicksilver and the substance of its own sulfur. For the actual quicksilver is that thing which is frozen by the vapor of its own substance while containing it, and the right reason is, because naturally every dry thing drinks its moisture. Therefore, we note here that the vapor of sulfur which is improperly coagulating quicksilver is so much only of its terrestrial, subtle and airy substance, which substance is digested in mixture for the first action of heat in the dictated mixture being uniformly and equally. And after this mixture rises after its decoction and digestion until this mixture material has the strength to freeze mercury. Truly quicksilver, in its first root, is composed and made of a very subtle white sulfuric earth with white water subtly mixed and mixed by a machine of nature in the dictated sulfuric earth, so that after the perfect composition this material is made a substance such which cannot be on a flat surface, that is to say in a united place without a pit. And this substance is called naturally homogeneum, because where it reminates or fire from the fixed whole, where all the matter of it goes away in the appearance of smoke, and this fact because the matter, of which such a thing is made, is incombustible, that is to say that it cannot burn. And is airy, and these two things are signs of perfection. And for this reason, as it is thus current, it cannot be in a plain frozen place. But it travels among the veins of the sulphureous earth which is all hot and rises upstream in the form of smoke against the veins by virtue of the heat. Because it is a composition of such a nature made that by heat it is sublimated. And truly such continual sublimation too formed is purified by decoction and becomes species in substance, so that s in white or red sulfur by natural heat, from degree to degree, is completely frozen. And after that, the sulfur dissolves and freezes by other quicksilver which passes over the sulfur, that's it. Say by the insuration of this sublime one and by the action of natural heat, so that at great length in 1,000 years successively by work of nature is frozen into perfect metal. And in this way nature rightly works and makes the metals in its mineral vessels. Now therefore, those who want to resemble nature in this work, you who want to make medicine, which is the perfection of the imperfect, thus as I have done by resembling all my operations to the work of nature approved by me, live Arnold de Villanova. The ordinance of which operations I will say and manifest will be all threads of philosophy below quite clearly. And accomplished all that I heard to say in the second chapter. Ors will tell and declare how quicksilver is an element of all metals by the third chapter. Says Aristotle, our doctor and sovereign philosopher, that living silver is an element of all liquefiable things, that is to say of all things which can be melted, because all liquefiable things, as they liquefy, convert into the substance of quicksilver, and on the other hand it mixes with them, because it is the substance of metals. But the metals differ in their composition from quicksilver according to whether the mercury was pure or the pure name of the sulfur, orty, stinking, black, earthy, foreign to it. For if quicksilver is pure and clean, the force of white sulfur will freeze it without difficulty. And it is the non-urent, white sulfur, which can be taken by those who open alchemy to make money. And if such sulfur is very well born and clear with redness, and is in it the force of simple non-burning heat, it will be a very noble thing, which the alchemists can claim to make very true gold. And it is pure red sulfur that is able to freeze mercury into fine gold in their terrestrial mines. And if the quicksilver is of good substance and the sulfur is fiery and not pure, he will convert it into a rain. And if the quicksilver is bad, pioros, ord, teriank and the sulfur also ord, earthen K and not pure he will convert it into iron. Stone is truly live silver, congeals or mortifies not pure and in it the force of sulfur which has thus mortified it and is not well mixed. And lead is created from large, very bad living silver, ponderos, vows and not pure. And sulfur is also bad, dirty and stinking and weak, and for this reason it cannot be frozen well. All these words, word for word, are the words of Aristotle in the quarter book which fists metals, to which the natural philosopher is believe in all your tens and not be fabled on the facet, do not in the lying and sophistic works which are at all strange and deviate from the operations of right nature. And for this reason it is said that the secret thread of philosophy loses its expenses and all its time and all its work when it opens with strange and immune things and which are not of the nature of quicksilver and cannot make a cat an ox and make a monkey out of it. These are verses in Latin which are declared in Romantic. He complains that the dirty secret of philosophers wastes their work, time, and effort. Now, therefore, do not want to resemble your work more than the work of nature and thus as I will tell you more clearly beforehand. 3 Now I will say and show how living sulfur is and all other combustible sulfur is strange to this work and is the imperfection of all metals and also in all works. Note therefore that all these mysteries. For all right truth of this art speaks the aforesaid words of the said wise philosopher Aristoteles are enuclegerers and in your heart retained. For what manifestly and patently is destine clarified by these noted words that in the metal body has double sulfurity, because there a sulfurity is in the profundity of the living silver included or the beginning of its mixture, before it was made silver lively at all. And the other sulfurity is supervenient from its strange and corruptible nature. And this is where it can be removed by the work of the machine. The other really cannot be avoided for this reason. Because this sulfurity is not adustable, it cannot be damaged. But the other sulfurity, which is adustable and which burns the body, is easily lost and is weaned from the bodies by calcination in fire and vacancy in different ages. And there remains the other good and pure sulfurity which preserves and keeps the bodies thus purified or prepared as I told you. And there are some who treat this pure sulfurity of the bodies prepared to make elixir. So as we treat our white and red sulfur from our stone, that is to say Sol, Moon and Mercury, but there is a big difference between their operations. For this sulfurity of the prepared bodies is lean and puny and is not so well purified when making medicine as is the sulfur which is milked from glowing bodies. It is Sun, Moon and Mercury and it is very effective on all the others. And on the other hand the operation of ices which open ovex the bodies prepare takes longer. For they must first be calcined and then washed and purified before they can begin our work. And for this reason I tell you that radical sulfurity cannot be denied, that it can be like the other, so it remains or burns without burning all frozen, which thing is a sign of its true perfection. And know and note well in your heart that all white sulfur which is treated with non-combustible bodies is nothing other than the subtle, white, sulfuric earth from which mercury in the beginning takes its first creation, if as I have clarified by above or second chapter. And for this reason the philosophers say that whoever wants to have material to make gold or silver, he must have suffered and lived silver from the very material from which gold and silver were made under the earth. Now if you ask me where you will find sulfur and quicksilver of such matter, I truly tell you that you will find them inside the bodies. And for this reason the wise philosopher who wants to have the white sulfur which has the power to freeze mercury than the trare of bodies. And really it's a rosy truth. But I let you know who is wrong, if you want to milk the sulfur from bodies, that you return them to their first nature, that is to say in such white, sulfurous earth, from which mercury, which after frozen into metal, at the beginning took its first creation. It therefore clearly appears that quicksilver holds, defends, and guards from combustion, that is to say from fire, what is of its own nature and which is of its own nature. I replied and said that the white sulfuric earth dictates, which is called suffering, which is without difficulty, the other suffers, which is not of its nature, art and burns, for what it is not of nature to quicksilver, and for this quicksilver refuses it and does not care about it. And note here that quicksilver is friendly and pleasant to everything that comes from its nature. Example, quicksilver adheres better to quicksilver and one embraces the other, for this reason because they are of the same nature and one has more pleasure with than the other. And then adhere better to gold than to other metals and then to silver. And these are the two metals which best share their nature with the nature of quicksilver. Other metals do not conform so much to it, because they have strange, earthy, non-pure, combustible and stinking sulfur in them. And for this truly we can say that such metals can share their nature less with the pure nature of mercury, for this reason because it is corruptible, stinking and combustible. And for this I tell you that the sulfur of these bodies, in any way, is prepared by means of artifice, at all times art and aid in ardoir. And yet in any work of alchemy it is quick and gives moisture. And for this Avicenna says that such sulfur does not enter into our art because it is not of the substance to quicksilver, nor of its perfection, since it only nigrifies and corrupts everything to which it is added. And for this we know that quicksilver is the most perfect of all bodies, because it is free from all adustion and all hardship. And in a similar way the bodies which participate more and possess the nature of quicksilver burn less than others. For this reason it clearly appears that a large quantity of living silver is the cause of perfection in bodies, and a large quantity of sulfur is the cause of corruption. For this reason there are no bodies which are better burned by examination of fire than others. And this is the reason, because they hold a greater quantity of combustible sulfur than the other bodies do. For stinking sulfur has two causes of corruption in it, namely an inflammable substance and another earthy and stinking substance. Why know that by the first substance does not remain, cannot be that which does not burn at all times and helps to burn, and in all work gives darkness. And by the other substance it cannot have fusion without material, and, if it is fixed, no fusion will have, so it is prohibited, and it cannot be fixed except that first it is calcined, and when it is calcined by no artifice the machine cannot melt, because it turns into non-fusible earth substance. But I will say that only quicksilver is the fine perfection of metals. Therefore since such a stinking sulfur has such a property that it cannot melt, thus all fusion and in all work of alchemy gives darkness, God forbids that quicksilver has such virtues, thus it is at all contrary to these virtues, because quicksilver settles without returning to the earth. Each time it fixes it well and returns to the ground. And this is done by festivity and haste of great precipitation. But by repeated straight sublimations, from degree to degree, successively, it is fixed without returning to the earth, like a straight metal fusion. And this is for good reason because it has viscous and dense, that is to say pure, substance in him of which the sign is constriction of him with those imbibition and mixture, with those things which are of his lineage and his nature. Therefore any wise person can feel that quicksilver has the right viscosity in it, not inflammable, for the adhesion which makes on the fire without sting. The dense substance of it clearly can be seen by one who has but one eye for the weight of its very large pea, for it weighs more than gold when it is of its nature. And there is a very strong noble composition, uniform and equal to nature, because the parts of it will not separate from each other, will not allow themselves to be separated. For he, with all the substance of the fire, will depart, or he, with all his substance, will return to the fire and will remain stands and perseverance. For these reasons therefore, quicksilver can be fixed without consumption or separation from its viscous and pure humidity and without it being converted into earth. And for this, of right necessity, the philosophers have noted in him the cause of true perfection. For this, because there is only one thing, which is sufficient for perfect fusion in one degree, namely with the heat of fire, or without the heat of fire, for the good adhesion or residence of all its uniform parts, stifles, and for the great fortitude of its mixture, because if in any way its parts become emitted by fire, never afterwards will it be corrupted, nor by ingression that a smoky flame can enter into it, never will it rise in the form of smoke, neither will it iliac any will leave. And these things are a sign of all perfection. It is now sufficiently proven that all combustible sulfur is corrupted to every work of perfection. For if it is fixed it forbids and prohibits that no fusion can be made where it is, thus it can clearly appear to iron that cannot be melted because of what it contains sulfur fixed in it. And when this suffering is not fixed, all right fusion anticipates and only slates and evaporates if as it appears or lead and other formless bodies. And for this I tell you that such suffering is not from the virtue of our art, nor from the perfection of it, because it prevents all right perfection in all its works. Therefore, if the quicksilver in all its works is perfect, it is saved from all adustment of fire and in it is entitled to the effect of true fusion. And when it is fixed to red it is a true tincture of restoration of very resplendent light and of very plantadal redness, cannot be separated from its measurement until all the effect of his work is accomplished. And also friendly and pleasant to the people and is called a means of joining all people, because he mixes willingly with them and at the most naturally bows and adheres to them. Because it is their nature. Nevertheless, it mixes better and more lightly with the sun and with the moon, for this reason because they are two principal metals whose nature participates better with quicksilver. Always know that nothing submerges itself, mixes with it only gold and the moon, and of this receive in you very great secret. And the reason is because Mercury retains in itself what was and is of its nature. Any other strange thing, which is not of his nature, he refuses and does not care about him. For his nature rejoices more in being mixed with what is properly his nature than he does with any other nature strange to him. For this reason, it is obvious that the bodies said to be perfectly pure, those which contain more mercury than those which contain too little mercury. Be praised therefore that the sovereign God glorious and blessed Creator Hyosm who from vile thing created precious stones, come by such mineral thing it holds very great simple and power in nature and has given it, the sovereign master Opifex and Redeemer, substance and property of substance, which substance contains and not possessed by things in nature. For it is the thing alone which overcomes and has power against the fire and rests in it rejoicing. Therefore, you can know well and understand with great faith that quicksilver, as long as it is made of metal, contains in itself everything that we have to do with our work and our ministry. And all other things, come be combustible, blazing with fire and burning in flames. Now I will say and declare that quicksilver only contains within itself its own suffering. It is therefore a manifest and patent thing for everyone to know that quicksilver contains within itself its good and pure sulfur for which it freezes into gold and silver according to the various ways of its digestion. And for this the philosopher says that all living silver when it is very pure and born the strength of its own white sulfur does not have it frozen into fine silver, and this is the very noble sulfur and the precious thing of which by work of artifice can alchemiary elixir of right money. And it the sulfur is very clear with redness and is in it the force of simple ignity or heat, but it will be a very noble thing from which the worker of philosophy can make the pure elixir of gold. And for this we demonstrate a good philosophy by saying that we must do it in such a way as we first have white sulfur, and then red sulfur above, because nothing can be made gold, except that first it is made silver. And this is the reason because nothing can pass from the first to the third unless it first passes through the second, no transition can be made from one end to the other, unless it first passes through the middle. Therefore it cannot be made to be perfect citron except that first after the black it is made white, for the fact that every citron color is made of very great whiteness and composed of very small redness, it cannot be made of white citron except that first has become black. No money can make it unless first it is at all destroyed and decorrupted and has become black. No good thing can become more pure, nor more evil except by its corruption. And the generation of one thing and also the corruption of one is the generation of another. And for this, who knows how to convert gold into silver, he knows how to convert silver into gold, because white sulfur, unlike silver, by grievous digestion of fire can be made red sulfur with gold. And this is the natural reason that siponation is nothing other than perfect digestion, whiteness is nothing other than ablution or the absence of blackness. For all heat that works in moist things first produces darkness. And heat which works in a cuddly thing generates whiteness. And when the heat works in something red cuttlefish generates citrinity. And of this you have an example in the calcination of lead, because it first turns black, then becomes white and finally a little red. Thus, white and red sulfur is only a matter of metals completely smooth, purified and in various ways cooked and degraded. And for this the philosopher Plato said that, in all silver is white sulfur, just as in gold is red sulfur. But such suffering, says Avicenna, cannot be found on earth except for the suffering which is in his bodies. Let us therefore carefully prepare and equip these bodies, so that we can milk the sulfur and the quicksilver from their own material from which gold and silver are made under the earth. Let's all respect the other infirm bodies in white and red colors. And it is the perfect bodies which help the imperfect without administration of any strange thing by means of our ministry. Therefore gold, as it is the most precious over all other metals, is tinctured with tinting redness and transforming all bodies. And silver is a tincture of perfect whiteness, tinting and transmuting bodies. These are therefore the bodies with which the mercury is mixed and is fixed by them with very large apparatus. But I would say that it is only a stone of the philosophers. For this reason it is therefore necessary that any inquirer of this science who is consistent and firmly committed to this work, not maintaining one thing, now another, does not presume to begin or attempt. For our art is not made by multitude of things, because it is only one stone and one medicine to which no strange thing is added, nothing that is in it is appetizing to it, if not only that the superfluities of corruption are removed. Therefore, all spoiled money is strange to quicksilver, because it is corruptible to itself. On the contrary, it is something that is not strange to him, which has been converted by our magisterium into gold or silver. There is therefore no thing that he has a job with, except only that which is closer to him by its nature. For nothing can be begotten of man except man or woman, therefore of other beasts can only be begotten similar beasts, each according to their own nature. And everything is also of this art, for thus as each one resembles its nature, thus by gold and by silver are generated gold and silver seeming to their nature. Uses therefore and works in this science your stone with honorable nature. For in another way the work will not be reduced except in its nature, in which you do not want to introduce no strange thing, no powder, no other thing. For various natures do not amend, do not improve our stone, do not enter into it. And if no strange thing is put there, it immediately becomes corrupted and cannot be done with it, what is required of it. Therefore, for bodily things suited to nature, it is necessary to learn body medicine. For it is thus that these things, since they are corporeal, are suitable for practicing the medicine of bodies through convenience of nature and by the profundity of its proximity and its adhesion or residence which it has as it is accomplished and perfect, all diminished by nature. And it is necessary that mercury mixes lightly with metals in front of its fugitiveness, and because no existing body can freeze mercury, it cannot firmly adhere to it. Also, mercury by itself cannot be a medicine to infirm bodies unless by examination it is separated from them. The necessary thing therefore is that we understand how we can treat the right medicine which has the power to cleanse human, infirm and metal bodies, and to freeze mercury. And note here that things large in substance are not suitable for simple things are not suitable for large things. Moreover, very useful substance therefore and more syrupy fusion to profession that the medicine is that the bodies are not. And more fixed retention than quicksilver is in its nature. And understand all this well. Now I will say and explain what things our great philosophical stone is about. If one asks oneself, and for good reason, what things sovereign medicine can deal with, to those who ask, let us answer and say that the dictated medicine deals with the things with which it is. And I let you know that it is both in the body and in quicksilver according to nature come all are found of a nature. But in the body medicine is more refined and more difficult to find than in quicksilver. But the medicine that is in quicksilver is not so perfect. And this is the cause. For there is no thing so worthy and so pure as is the sun and its shadow, that is to say the moon, without which no living silver which has the power to shine on the earth can be born. And truly whoever tries to hold on without this quicksilver can only go the blind way. Because why does gold give the color of gold and silver gives the color of silver? Therefore whoever wants to tint quicksilver with the sun and the moon comes with another great and high degree of secret which is called white sulfur, which sulfur when it turns red is very good red sulfur to gold. And say two bodies is treated are white and red sulfur, because the right pure substance of sulfur is in them by machine of sovereignly depurated nature. For this, understand that gold is the father, the moon is the mother and the sun Mercury who kills his father and his mother by their dissolutions into mercury. And say two bodies with their paired sulfur are treated with our medicine. Still truly I will tell you that sulfur combined to be so much only the matter of bodies. And also it can be milked as only quicksilver more soon and more lightly come it is father of Icests two lights by reason of their own births, by nature, and it is root of all liquidable and fusible things. For by him and from him all such things are procreated and in him and through him are resolved. For nature embraces its own nature and rejoices with it more than it does with any other nature which is not like it. For this reason, mercury is the ease and lightness of extracting its useful substance and mercury has in fact by its nature the right substance, which substance bears its birth from the right material of quicksilver and from this material the dictate substance is created and formed. Now do not have a harsh understanding here, for I tell you that this matter is not quicksilver, not in its nature, not in all its substance, but it is indeed a part of it which it is not now. Come it is made of stone, however it is simply quicksilver, although the stone is of its own making and made. For quicksilver illuminates it and guards it from all combustive adustment, which is a sign of perfection. Therefore medicine is in each matter, that is to say both bodies and the substance of quicksilver. Let us therefore select the material of this precious stone from bodies and from quicksilver. However, I advise you that you do not work in this art except from Mercury and the sun, and from Mercury and the moon, since all the benefit and all the operation of ice is contained in them. Now I will say that it is impossible to compose this stone only from the material of metals and also will say that it is difficult to perfect the work begun in the first material of metals. I say that, if in the first natural matter we wanted to begin our work for sun, the work would be too long and incomplete, and nevertheless too great and infinite expenses would be required to do this. And come later by great difficult artifice this stone is made of the nature of metals, however still the philosophical work is not begun, because it is necessary that the stone of philosophers be treated of the nature of two bodies before let it be made elixir accomplished. For all the time it is necessary that the elixir be better purified and digested than gold or silver, for what it is to convert all the bodies from their diminished perfection into gold or silver, which thing you have two metals could not do. For, if they gave their perfection to another imperfect person, they would become imperfect, because they cannot relate to each other, if not as much as they extend themselves. And for this we found a subtle work in our stone, so that it is improved and is more virtuous by operation of art than is by work of nature, and that it is made elixir accomplished according to the allegory of the sages, composed of the species of the stone condiment, antidote, defense and purge of all the crene ding, purging and transforming bodies into true unification and solifice. But the new workers believe that it is the end of the work when the work has begun. Why, since they have plowed so much and know that the work is done by the nature of the metals, they believe they have accomplished the perfect elixir, and when they project they find nothing else, because they are left to open where they must have begun. And of course that's the point. Now I will say which thing is the first work of the philosophers to compose this stone. The first work of the philosophers is that you dissolve their stone into mercury so that it can return to its first material. For according to what the philosopher Aristotle in his quarter book of metals says to those who open to sophistry, the artists of alchemy know that the species of metals cannot be transmuted, which saying is simply true, except that such species, also as the philosopher says, after if not first return to their first matter, which matter was quicksilver, which is element of all liquidable things. And truly from whom it is transmitted to another form than they were in front of. Not for this reason the species, but the individuable things of the species, which things individuable by sensible action are at all subject, for the core in which they are corruptible things. Example, to make what I said better understood, the kind of silver that is silverness does not transmute into the kind of gold that is aureity, not on the contrary. For truly the species do not think of themselves as being transmuted. But indeed the individual things of species are transmuted as to their first matter, are returned and are corrupted, and in the first matter result. And therefore the necessary thing is that individual things return to another form, since they are corrupted. For the corruption of one thing is the generation of something else. Nothing can be destroyed unless it re-emerges afterward in any form. And since a form is destroyed, sometimes among other forms, which form disperses, and this orders this operation, or another. And for this the philosopher says that he has mastered that in the solution and sublimation of two lights, that is to say of the sun and the moon, we mainly work. Because the first degree of this work is that they turn into quicksilver. And thus they will return to their first matter. Note therefore well and hear the sacred words of the mystery, for in this work declares what thing the stone is, as the beginning of its work is the dissolution of it. And for this the philosopher says, if the bodies are not made incorporating these spiritual hopes, the work is null, and this applies to all operations of alchemy, large and small. Now therefore the beginning of our work is in the dissolution of the stone. And therefore when it is dissolved, the bodies are returned to the nature of spirit, it is quicksilver, for as long as the nature of them is and remains more fixed than the nature of spirit. And know that the solution of bodies occurs with the freezing of the spirit, and the freezing of the spirit occurs with the dissolution of bodies. And this is understood in all operations of alchemy, because when the heat of the sun or the moon is incorporated to make elixir with the hopes by imbibitions and desiccations in the sun, and afterward they are placed in the oven or in the oven for the philosophers to soothe their dissolution, freezing of the hopes and humitary fixation. And freezing is the dissolution of the penetrating calcined body, so that the body is mixed with the mind. And they bind and kiss together and do one thing to each other. And after no time one is separated from the other, thus like the world which is mixed with the world. For all matter has returned to its first homogeneity, and the first homogeneity of bodies is nothing other than quicksilver. And this is a notorious truth. Because since the body dissolves into mercury, one mixes with the other and adds without any separation. First the bodies return to spirit substance. And so everyone can make an elixir made of gold or silver better than mining. Because the mining industry carries no corruption within it, especially money. And more money from one mining company than others. And it is because of his suffering that he is not good, not as rightly depurated as ours is. And for this, whoever wants to mine silver in this work must have it purified by its ashes or by the compound first. But we must not do with our money in this way, we must not examine it who does not want to, until it contains within it, not its pure right and its completely pure sulfur, it does not contain any other metal which has mauve suffers in him. And for this reason it is not necessary to examine it, because it is pure and clear to put into this art, if not only to try at the first projection when it is done. And is too much better for this art than that of mining, because it contains its sulfur better digested and purified by various decoctions than the other does. And for these reasons it is better in all things than that of mining. And on this the philosophers say that their gold is not vulgar gold, that is to say that it is better in all operations than that of mining, and thus it is silver. And know that the metal or quicksilver that you will have converted into sun or moon will be better to use in all works of alchemy than the first mining was, and the sooner you will purify and complete your elixir with the metal of alchemy with mining metal. For it will not be necessary to purify the sulfur which is better purified with alchemic metal than that which is less purified with mining metal. You will never have to dissolve or freeze any small elixir to increase their colors, when you open with alchemic metals. Therefore, it is necessary that you work in the dissolution of bodies. And when they are resolved, then they will return to their first nature. However, this is not right. Because when one form is destroyed, it is sometimes put and arranged in another form. So it appears in the work of villains who make stone from lime and ashes from ashes to see. As well therefore and in a stronger way can any wise studious by our natural artifice corrupt these bodies and them introduce into another new form, because the intention of our work is that we choose the pure right substance of mercury that is in these two bodies, which substance is called white sulfur or white earth and sulfur. And this earth is called the substance of mercury, and the liquid which mixes with the substance is called quicksilver and is called the sulfuric earth, for this reason because it is the substance of alien life that is called quicksilver. And for this, know that, when we have sublimated mercury, this sublimation is only the certic substance of silver and its right first sulfuric earth, which could not be sublimated, except that it was sulfuric. And for this, it is called mercurial sulfur, incombustible and without difficulty, in which only is contained elixir completed with the encircle of both bodies, for what it is better digestible, and therefore purified and better fixed. And for this it is necessary that whoever wants to open so much mercury that after its fourth sublimation it is fixed and then calcined. And in encircle fix it is necessary to put so much non-fix but that it is sublimated. V. Where does he live? Times. And as much moon lime as all the mercury rises. And then all this must be dissolved and buried in fiends. And after separate the four elements and purify your elements to better purify your sulfur. Now I will say some operations to mix the stone to make a completed elixir. Hic igiter ices therefore is our renowned stone, because no trimming is from one end to the other except through the middle. The tips of our stone are quicksilver at the first degree, and at the second degree are accomplished elixir, and no less than 2 degrees are depurations, decoctions and digestions. And these are the best things and at work most immediately, as I believe you are not unaware of. Therefore do not faint, for he who sows wheat receives wheat, and each seed corresponds to its seed. And every tree bears its fruit according to its nature, for nature is wise and willing to benefit it, and in it its own seed is contained. And for this Avicenna says, not that I have seen gold and silver say that alchemy is not true, but because I have seen gold and silver say I that science is true. So as much as our stone naturally contains in it tincture as it is created in the body of the earth perfectly. For this reason it cannot have movement that it can be an accomplished elixir unless it is moved by art and by operation. And for this various arts and various operations are to be found by various masters and various philosophers, so that by art and by operation is accomplished what by nature is defective. For nature is always inclined to its own perfection. So please open it. And know the nature of the stones and their fortress and which one is friend or enemy of the other. And be careful to know what you will do. And before you begin, see what you begin. Make the big thing small by calcination, namely metals, and the heavy thing light by sublimation, namely mercury. And the bitter thing softened by imbibition, that is to say medicine, and the bitter thing dulcified by inhumation, that is to say, all matter. And if you know how to do this, you will be among our number of philosophers and will embrace the whole mystery of this art. And know that the operations of this stone, none are medicines in gold which must participate with money and none diversify. Because at the beginning of the composition of the stone the work of gold and silver agrees very well. But at the root of its fermentation there are disagreements, because the leaven of gold is gold, and the leaven of silver is silver. So make each species with its species and each nature with its nature, because the white work is to be whitened and the red work is to be rubified. Therefore, do not mix the work of one stone with the work of the other stone. For you will faint if in any other way you do and only ask for its two bodies to open sun with Mercury and moon with Mercury. However, it is very possible that something could be opened with the other bodies, but the operation will not be as good as the other. And the reason is because the mercy and purity that they do not have cannot give. It is an impossible thing, therefore, for one to be able to find in a thing what no time was in it, no thing can give what it never has. And for this the philosopher Plato said, "Why do you want to open these two bodies? The souls are not part of the most grievous, but of the smallest, are not of the least made, but of the grievous. If you want to use ices, you must convert them into the likeness of the two bodies of the sun and the moon and assemble them into one by composing the elixir from them. Because Mercury, as it is transmutable in the complexion of each planet, with which it is affirmed. Einzie is quicksilver, which is of the complexion to the planet of Mercury, each metal or whichever it is together. For, if it is added with lead, it will require lead, if with iron it will require iron, and thus following others according to their nature. And, if there are two rays, that is to say sun and moon, Mercury is added and is made a perfect elixir. Therefore, is it not appropriate that we should open ourselves not only to this noble matter, because things are not made themselves by their nature? Why, then, do these demands of you have nature which is not in it? Truly fatuity is and perdition of sun. Do not therefore wish to lie to the sun whose mother is a levress, for you would also be a levress and your work would also be. Frustrate Mengo with the fattest chariot and Macause as much gold and as much silver as you wish. And do not ask nature that in it does not exist, that it never existed, for you would tire your soul without any significant gain. But make an ointment of Mercury with sulfur and blanket, that is to say of the sun and the moon, of which the head is red and the feet white and the eyes black, and Macaw all the mystery. Hear then what I say to you, for true things are such that no philosopher has spoken of them better. And here is completed and perfect the first book of the Rosary of the Inquisition of the Precious Stone. Here begins the second book of the purest Inquisition. It is manifest, then, etc., manifestum est ergo etc. It is clear that the operation of medicine is the work of nature, and this work of nature and this medicine is the dictates of nature. Because this medicine is composed only of nature. It is therefore certain that everything came and procreated from this matter, in which matter the thing arises thus as jelly is converted into water for heat. Is it therefore a certain thing that the jelly was before water? So everything is our stone which turns into living silver through our mystery. So you can know well that it was first quicksilver. However, the way of turning our stone into quicksilver is the conversion of natures to their first root. And the conversion of nature is done by the circle of the elements by returning and turning. And the elements are of their capacity altogether convertible. And for this reason, they generate and corrupt and alter altogether. So convert your elements and you will find what you ask for, because our work is nothing other than a mutation of nature and wonderful conjunction, that is to know how to stir hot with cold, and moist with dry. However, the dry thing cannot be converted into a moist thing, if it is not first made cold, and the cold thing cannot be converted into a hot thing, unless it is first made moist. For no transfer can be made to the third, if it does not pass through the secant. Example to understand better, the earth does not convert into air if it is not first returned to water, fire cannot be returned to water unless it is first returned to air. For air and water are linked to the lesser elements, and fire and earth are linked to the extreme elements. For the air is bound by fire, just as water is bound by the earth. And for this reason water is contrary to fire, and earth has air by natural complexions. And by their appropriate complexions the air and the air agree by moisture, the air by its natural complexion that is moisture, and the air by its complexion attributed to it that it is moisture. And for this icelles two elements turn more lightly on each other, because they agree in each other not regularly, not jointly, but particularly. And also by this figure fire and earth agree in drought, naturally by earth and appropriately by fire. And for this the more lightly one turns into the nature of the other, and also the sooner one becomes separated from the other. And to better make you understand the natural complexions and the appropriate complexions of the four elements I composed here is this little table which follows. D. The earth is dry by its nature and cold by its appropriate complexion. C. The water is cold by nature and moist by its appropriate complexion. B. The air is moist by its nature and warm by its appropriate complexion. A. And fire is hot by its nature and dry by its given complexion. And for this, know that the first complexes are natural and the others appropriate. And thus you see clearly that air and earth, water and fire together cannot be returned, except that fire into air and earth into air first are returned. Therefore, the dry, that is to say the earth, has returned to the cold, that is to say, to the water. And the cold, that is to say water, has returned to moist, that is to say air, has returned to heat, that is to say in the nature of fire. So come and hear the whole mystery of this art. The first rule of stone is that we must dissolve the large and dry thing, that is to say gold and silver into living silver, so that they return to their first material. And this dissolution is done by quicksilver, for he made the sun and moon return to their first matter and to its nature. But, for what living silver has in it as fetulence and adustion, disconvenience without inflammation, and substance of stinking aquosity, it is necessary that it diminishes and therefore appetizes its excesses and increases it in its absences or defects, if by icest quicksilver we want to make or create pure accomplished medicine. And know that its terrestrial fetulence must be removed and diminished and purged well by sublimation, so that it does not create color by itself in the projection, and so that it does not have fugitive water. Also we must purge it so that all its material in the projection is not fugitive fault. Because at least we must save the middle substance of it which is its right property. And for this reason, no time is Saturn procreated, no time Jupiter and no time Mars, the procreation of the ancestors came through the impurity of Mercury. And also never for the purity of him is created the sun and never once the moon. Therefore let us prepare good and purge it of its filth, that we may have what we ask for by the grace of God. Now I will say how Mercury and the Meniere of the regime of the elements are prepared and purified together. Ingenium ergo etc. The machine therefore of remotion, that is to say of removing the superfluous substance of the earth of Mercury, if it is that it must sublimate once or twice with sea and salt, which is prepared, until the whitest substance of him is sublimated at the angles of the sublimatory diasti. And the glass is thus prepared, take 2 pounds or new, white glass, and break it, and fill it with a new pot of earth, and which is not glazed inside, not outside, and clean the mouth of the pot well, and put it in an oven between live coals after it is dry, and let it remain for a good hour and a half, and keep the red pot in the fire for half an hour, and no longer, so that it does not found it, and it will be at the end of the hour and a half. And also make sure he doesn't blush too much. Then take the pot of pincers, and break it, and take your glass, or pincers, while hot, and get it in distilled vinegar, and thus make it 4 times until the cere is completely turned into powder. Where is desired at the first assation, after it is marinated or vinegar, dry it in the sun, and after grind on the marble into a fine powder, and this powder crushed into smaller ones by an hour in a new pot of earth or the lute mouth, after breaking the pot around the base holding it on other distilled vinegar, and the powder of the glass will be found in it, take it and dry it in the sun. And it's even sublime all the esperise in pure whiteness without libation. With this glass is sublimated mercury, and with some salt, of each a pound of mercury, and sits, and fits with distilled vinegar, white.v. times, and learns to sublimate. And when its very white substance is raised with fire by a degree and a half, you must take it and lie in it prepared, fervent and hot, so that it returns to its first nature of living silver, and this is its right enema. Sublime him again to remove the truth that is in him, and do your work with such mercury, because in any other way it is not good to work with him in any operation except in such a way. And for this said Avicenna, the first thing you must do in the great work is that you sublimate the mercury, then solve it so that it returns to its nature, and then everything sublimates. After you stand with mercury, sun and moon, by right conjunction burn with esculpes, that is to say both of one and the other, and be careful that the sun is not in conjunction with the moon. Because sometimes the sun would eclipse, that is to say that you must not mix the white body with the red, nor the red with the white. But each of you will dissolve in your apartment. Because the white color is to be whitened and the red color is to be rubbed. Therefore, do not mix the thread of one stone with the thread of the other stone, because you will fail too much. And when you have mixed its two bodies by separation composition with mercury, grind each composition well and strongly, particularly on 2 propyre marbles. And soak each one by it with some water of mercury, grinding, and soaking, and drying or hot sun, until the medicine has drunk its pee of water of mercury. And grind it even harder and soak in the dictya as long as it is made clear like Mosul. Afterwards put it in glass vials which have the top and long neck and narrow. And matter only overcomes the third of each vial. And be the vials well smothered with their covers, and linen sheets with quicklime on the marble, and detramp with a bun of corrupted egg and a poi of dissolved salt, mixed with the aubin. And then put the vial in Mary's bath to dissolve the matter, and make a fire of 0.12. Minus is the 5th part of a degree. And a degree of fire contains the flame of .v candles, you will therefore continue the fire of a candle, which rises 12 minus, until your matter is dissolved. And then you will distill it through the felt. And the blackness, which you will see on the felt, take wisely and keep it apart. For this is the oil and the right sign of true dissolution, and what is dissolved comes for subtlety. And the thing that ascends is freed from low things and demands high things, just as the body or the airy spirit does. Keep it wisely so that it does not go up in smoke, and, just as you make it white, make it red. Because this medicine is in one essence and in one way the same. And what is added to the red citron color is perfect by very fine and very clear and pure substance of fixed sulfur. And that is why there is a difference between lunar medicine and solar medicine. Because lunar medicine contains within itself its purified white sulfur, and solar medicine contains within itself its purified red fixed sulfur. Take care that in this work you are not too hasty, but patient and long. And do not mind grinding and crushing the material on the marble, and soaking it, and drying it on the marble in the hot sun. Because when it fits together more, it becomes more mollified by the yaw, and the more it is crushed, the better it is mollified, and the more it mollifies, the better it is tainted, until the large parts, which are bound together, are loosened, weaned and separated. Because then the spirit becomes entangled with the body. And the body, which thus becomes empasted, completely dissolves. And the impastation is made with great contrition, imbibition or enceration, and association with the hot sun. And this is the understanding of Isol's towards. Luter extractum sic mos sam contir factum. Hoc non festin sed temporis ordine fine. Abian urine disponit membra ruin. Lightly drawn and thus made to crush the mass. This is not in haste, but at the end of time. Abyssinous blood disposes the members of the ruin. And thus by strong constriction and imbibition the parts linked with the viscosity of the yaw that the bodies have taken. And when they dissolved, they came to nature of mind. And no time separates one from the other, even as water does from water, because nature rejoices in its nature. And the husband is linked together with the wife. For this reason, dear son, you must work to dissolve the stone, so that you can better separate pure things from impure things. And the grievances left to rest, the work with which the lightest can be perfect. Or tell the manner of burial of the dissolved stone. Take the stone when it is completely dissolved and put it on the hot heat, that is to say in fiens by .xl days. It is a month of philosophers so that it rots and dissipates. And take care that the matter is not in such a hot place that it boils, but in light heat, and it will become the matter in its first form, which form is in black color, in scent of fire, and in gentle touch. And these are the signs of the perfect dissolution of bodies. Now I will say about the recapitulation of the first regimen. I will now tell you briefly the whole manner of the solution. So first sublimate mercury, and then solve it and sublimate everything. After incorporating it with the earth, that is to say moon, and with the fire, it is the sun, and cook this until so much which returns to its first nature. And this is done so that such sulfur and such mercury we have the same material from which gold and silver were made from under the earth. For truly if sulfur is good and quicksilver too, we can make gold and silver well from ice. And truly it is a mystery not to do this to the great lords and the rich, and whoever can do it has the lasting treasure. Or who has three things to do, namely, firstly, the tool of engineering, the work of hands and the great arbitrator. And these three things require wealth, wisdom and books. Or dire of the second regiment of the stone which is washed. Or the second rule of the stone if it is that it is necessary to wash the black stinking thing, until it is clear and shiny and is completely free of all filth, which thing has to be done with the division of the elements, and with the distillation of the yaws, and with the calcination of the stone. There is 4 elements, 2 which are stone, and 2 which are aquatic. The stone elements are fire and earth, 11 which are dry. And the 2 aquatiquans are the air and the yaw which are moist. And know that the fire destroys them by we distill waters and purify them better by levigation of the air. Also reduces the size of the stone by calcination and devours the dirtiness of their sulfurity. And for this reason, our stone is called 4 elements so that it is better tainted and better purified of its rubbish, and that it can then be added more forcefully without separation. And for this, it decays and rots, because nothing was born, grew, or animated, except after the putrefaction of it. And for this, the elements rot so that the parts, which are dispersed, can better separate. And if they do not rot, they will never melt, the medicine will never dissolve, and if it does not dissolve, it will return to nothing. Now I will say the division of the stone by the 4 elements. So take the stone, which is thus rotten and corrupted, and divide it into 4 elements in the bath of Mary, first of all by light fire well, and also continues. And takes his first boat. After vigorous fire until you have received the air with the fire all mixed, and what remains at the bottom of the Ars distillery is dry and black earth. And know that the distillation of the water must be done in the bath of Mary, so that the parts of the stone more soluble and without heat, of nature of simple aquosity as they only approach, are distilled. Air and fire are distilled by ashes, so that through them, as they both sustain ignition and fire, it is necessary that the colors and the largest terrestrial parts be elevated. The more simple it is then that separation is made by the earth, as it cannot sustain ignition, not fire, which only does what is separated by ashes. By this way, therefore, will you divide the 4 elements. For this reason it is necessary to milk water from the moist substance and not from anything else. Air and fire must be milked from the dry substance and not from anything else, for what in its 2 has grunt tincture. Earth does not bother you, but let it be white and a fixed substance. For the earth dries and fixes, the world and lava, the air and fire tingle and melt. And for this you need to have a lot of oil and quantity of oil, because there will be so much tincture as there will be a large quantity of oil. Afterwards the yaw is purified and retified once it is distilled. But I agree that one must prepare the line and rectify it. When you have, as it is said above, the 4 elements divide particularly. First you will take one and distill it 0.7 times. And this is his right preparation and his true restoration. And the feces of the water that you will make in each distillation, separate them apart, and put them back with the serdicted black earth. And this water, 7 times distilled, put it apart. For it is nothing other than the mercury of the philosophers which makes the strong matrimony, and the life that washes the earth. And just like you made the white water, because they have a way of enema and a semblance of effect, except that the red water is to rubify, and the white water is to whiten. Do not therefore mix one thing with the other, for you will fail if you do it in any other way. Now I will say about the washing of the air and its equipment. First, divide the air from the fire by distillation, for that which distills from the fire is pure air. And what remains at the bottom of the distillery is dry fire. Be careful therefore that you distill the water from the earth and the air from fire, because the air is distilled with the fire. For this reason it is tinted water, and its tincture is fire, and fire is the body, and air is spirit which carries fire. So if you mix mercury with fire, sometimes it will be red, and always after the color will be bitter, mercury will be bitter and mercury will be inseparable. Whatever you want to rub, rub with the fire of the stone. Now I will say in what way oil can be milked from metals, because too little can be milked from stone. So put on it the substance of the body from which you would like to milk oil as much pure mercury which overcomes 4 or more degrees. Then light the fire from a long time, and quench it until you see the oil rise, bit by bit, on the mercury. Spoon it wisely and keep it apart. And if it becomes appetizing, that is to say the mercury, add other pure mercury and heat, and put it back on the fire. And do this continuously until everything is dissolved in oil. And it is oil, meaning the substance of the 2 bodies, it is the sun and the moon. Distills this oil by lambic once. For his preparation is such as is the preparation of the world, and keep him well to accomplish your work. Know that any lamina which is extinguished in ice oil will be dyed 3 times in gold. Now I will say what difference there is between the wheel and the yaw. There is a very big difference between the coloring of oil and oil. Because the yaw washes and whirled, and will ting and color. And this thing we have the sheet for example. For if the cloth, which is old, is washed in water, it dries afterwards in the sun, and the cloth separates from it, and the cloth remains in the state and color in which it was before, according to just as long as it is sharper. Quite the contrary is oil, because, if the sheet touches the sheet will be made or sheet without separation of heat of fire, just like the yaw makes or sheet, except that the sheet of the whole is destroyed. This oil cannot be separated from the cloth, except by the vacation of water and the drying of fire. For this reason, the oil is a thing resembling the soul which is or body, which cannot be milked except by the vacancy of water and the drying up of fire. The yaw is the spirit that treats the soul of bodies. And when the soul is treated with bodies, it remains and remains with the spirit, because the spirit is its place, and the soul is the tincture which is carried by the spirit, thus as the tincture of the dyers is worn by the yaw on the sheet. And the yarn then separates from the sheet by dryer. The dye and color remain and remains or fixed sheet, and this is by the oleaginity. Everything thus is of the air, that is to say of the spirit, in which the soul is carried, it is the tincture of the air. The spirit therefore retains the soul, just as the soul retains the body, and the soul does not remain in the body, even if it is the spirit. Therefore, when they come together and add themselves together, no time later will they separate, because the spirit holds the soul, just as the soul holds the earth. Now I will say how one must prepare the fire and the earth. You will calcine the fire and the earth each by him until there is no darkness left in them. And what comes up from the fire is red oil, and what comes up from the earth is a white and precious thing. For the oil, the sooner it is freed from the body, the more precious it is held. So take care of all his things in their due time, and keep each one well by him. Now I will recapitulate the second regimen. You must therefore exercise, use and understand the separation of the elements and the ablution, or vacancy, of them. That is to say the water and the air are combined and washed by distillation, and the earth is burned by calcination until there is no remnant of the soul or body. And these elements, washed and prepared, you will keep each apartment in sealed containers. And even the oil, for the air sometimes corrupted him for the honesty and affinity of his nature. And on you will write down the virtues, names and colors of each vessel, so that you do not mistake one thing for another when you open one. But I will say of the third regime of the stone that is reduced. The rule of stone is to reduce or return the moist water to the dry earth, so that it returns its lost moisture. But, as the earth is of two bodies and the elements are dry, hard and stony, that is to say the fire and the earth which both agree in dryness, for this reason they must together prepare. Because they have all the preparation. Assemble therefore that the size of the fire with that of the earth after the extraction of the air. And prepare them together to shorten the work and so that one fits better than the other. And on the other hand the preparation is better to do together and more immediate. And their preparation is that they recover the moisture, which they lost in their burning. Because the calcined body is discontinuous, for that it is deprived of all moisture. For this reason, as he is at all dry, and he is very thirsty, he willingly drinks it moist by right nature. So consider this carefully and listen to what I say and do not diversify your understanding. In devio errans. And study natural things, for all things are made by nature, and nature reigns in all works. In another way, if you do not take any natural action, your action is worthless. So open up like someone who catches a fish who doesn't know whether it will catch or not. Now I will tell you the way of reducing or returning the water to the earth. Therefore place the first layer at a time on the earth by grinding on the propyre marble. And, poi a poi, imbibe with the dictation every week, and decocant, and calcining lightly until the earth has drunk from its yaw the 0.50th part of him. Because know that it must first be brought to sleep with small people, and then with small people. For this reason, grind and crush the earth many times, and poi by poi soak it with 8 days in 8 days, dehull, and then calcine or light fire. And so do it again and again. For the earth bears no fruit, not because it is watered many times. And, if the crushing or crushing is not good until the water is made a body with the earth, nothing will benefit. Do not therefore want to free your hand from the crushing, born of the assation, until the water is dry and the earth white. Because desiccation with strong crushing and assation of the earth turns white. Be careful whenever you do not wet the earth, do not poi a poi with long crushing. And after drying, grind it hard. And for this reason, this is a certain point acceptable so that by administering too little drying, or too much moisture, the work cannot be corrupted. And that is to say that you must cook the earth in asin so that the dissolution rises, and in soak it to dissolve so as to defili in asin. And therefore every time after the calcination of the earth there is a watery water. And don't hurry, but from 8 in 8. You water your land, then cook and calcine it until it has watered the 50th part of it, and repeat the work many times, notwithstanding that it is long, for you cannot have tincture in it until it is accomplished. Study well therefore in this, because in the work are all the signs, the ones which in each decoction can appear to the heart of the good student and the good listener, the ones which must be kept secret and their things well inquired and investigated, and I will tell you the signs. There are 3 of them. These are 3 colors, that is to say the first sign is of black color, the second of white color and the last, that is the third, is of citrine color. When the earth is black out of the calciner, the imperfection is not yet complete. So, each time, poi by poi, invigorate the fire by burning it until the earth is completely white by the fortress of fire. For just as the heat which opens to the moist generates blackness, so when it opens to the dry generates whiteness. And for this, if the earth is not white, grind it with imbibition, and after calcine it. For water and fire wash the earth and leave it all dark, and the preparation of it is always done with water. And of such purity, as the yaw will be, of such purity also the earth will be. Now I will say in what way the earth sublimates after its calcination. When the earth will have water the 0.50 th, part of its p, sometimes sublimate it with the greatest fire you can until it rises like a very white powder. And when you see the earth risen like a white cloud, and like dead powder adhered to the sides of the sublimatory, reiterate on this powder your sublimation without the feces which are reworked according to the sublimatory. Because the fixed parts of the powder are remanded with the feces, and by no means could they, after weaning, separate from the feces. The powder which is dried and deeased from the feces is a noble and precious thing, and is called ash. Because it is sublime and very honored. And what remained of him in the depths of the sublimatory is vituperated ash, dampened, filth and rot and obscure darkness, which does not cause us any harm. Let us therefore make ignition and knowledge between the clear and the limp. For when it rises like a very white cloud, it is accomplished. Spoon it and take it wisely so that it doesn't go up in smoke. For this is the thing asked for: white earth, excavation, coagulant and coagulated, ash streak of ashes, arsenic. And it is white sulfur which according to Aristotle, is the very noble thing, which the alchemist can take to make gold and silver. Open therefore with what is suffered to the moon, for it is accomplished. And in this way is the fact of white, non-current sulfur, of which the great elixir is composed. Now I will tell you the composition of red sulfur. Therefore, if you want to compose the red sulfur with gold, dissolve the white sulfur, which you have made on it, into the red yolk by constriction, imbibition, and light decoction. And when everything is dissolved, freeze it in stone, and then dissolve it another time, and another time freeze it. And again the third time dissolve it in the red line, and after sublimate everything with very great fire. Thus I knew that the work of the good master takes color by being digested by dissolution and combined by operation. For what rises in the form of powder is pure and clean white sulfur, and what remains in the sublimatory is shiny and fixed white sulfur, and through this sulfur can make fine gold alkalis. Because he artificially converts quicksilver into the very true Sunday. By this thing therefore we show the truth of the philosophers in this work which is believed to be impossible, that is to say that it is a stone, a medicine, a nature, a disposition, a work and a white vessel suffers and to the red feuilles touts together and compose. It is not necessary to dictate whiteness, that is to say white sulfur, milking it until it is red. So when I see in the morning that my urine is white and grey, I will soon know that I have slept and will return to bed. And when my somp is not taken, the urine turns into citron. Because citronation is nothing other than perfect digestion, and this is the true composition of non-urine's white and red sulfur, which is accomplished by the quarter regimen, is made elixir accomplished to perfect all things diminished into true solifice or unifice. Now I will say according to Avicenna why the earth sublimates. No one should sublimate the earth with sophistic works except our elixir, and those things which are sublimated by point 2. Reasons are sublimated by them. Because they are hoped for. And also that the better earth is incorporated with the esperise, and the mercury which is esperise sublimates everything through it. Our earth which is lime does not sublimate except that it is incorporated with mercury. Contrary, and grind the lime hard and soak it with the mercury liquid, then cook it, that is to say sublimate it until everything is made into a body. And don't worry about repeating this many times. Because bodies can rise high. And for this, it is necessary that you purify its nature as much as possible and grind it hard and incorporate with mercury, that is to say with water until both are made one body. For we do not do sublimation, but so that we can return the bodies to their natural nature, and so that they are thus as spirit, so that they are more like to return in all things, whether in sun or in moon. And also we do this sublimation so that we can return bodies to their first nature, that is to say mercury and sulfur. And let's do it also for 3 other reasons. The first is that bodies are made of natural nature, the second reason is that mercury incorporates very well with lime, and the third reason is that the lime takes on a white or red color at all. And for this, the lime at the moon must be white, because it sublimates with mercury. And the mercury must also be white, and this mercury is to be understood as the layer in which the lime fits. And the lime in the sun must be red, and the mercury, that is to say the water, must be made red by the fire of the stone. And with such red mercury white lime rubifies, as he said in the chapter of the composition of red sulfur, and must be encircled powder. Because it would not open well to the sun, nor to the moon, if not in such a way. And with mercury, it is the realm in which you sublimate, that is to say distill, with the moon do not mix anything. Because the color of the sun does not enter the moon, the color of the moon does not enter not or soleal. But each species be placed with its species apart in good fire, and sublime everything, and do not mix the sublimated name with the sublimated, but put each one apart. Because what remains, let us reiterate, must be sublimated by the addition of mercury, that is to say by its yaw, until everything is sublimated. In other way, keep that you do not put it into action. Lambic must be to see in which you sublimate the mercury which is incorporated with the lime. The cucurbit must be of good strong earth which does not creak the fire and must be twice glazed on the inside, and must be the mouth of the cucurbit rather more wider than the bottom so that the mercury, that is to say its water which is incorporated with the lime, can more lightly ascend and rise. And lambic, which is sear, must enter between two vessels of cucurbit, and add well and assemble, so that the mercury cannot escape or be outside. Because it does not sublimate, not by the light smoke of the air. And for this, if he finds a place where they can go, he will disappear in light smoke. For this fight your ship with our black ship, the composition of which I have put in my other books so that the work is not lost. So look and think carefully about what I have told you. For all these words are necessary and worthy by love. And struggle to compose the white and red sulfur. Or I will say of the quarter of the stone that is to be figured or fixed with the help of my Creator. The fourth rule of the stone is that it must fix the white sulfur and the red on the fixed body, that is to say that the white sulfur must fix it with the silver and the red sulfur must fix it. Fix on gold. For according to what Pythagoras says, who does not freeze the quicksilver which is treated with white sulfur, that is to say with the moon, the suffering the fire, that is to say the body, no way can be given whiteness, and whoever does not coagulate quicksilver with red sulfur, suffraining fire cannot find a way to redness. Therefore do not be tired, do not spend your time on things in which you cannot come wisely. Please open and not crumble adventurously. For without leaven there cannot be sun or moon, but nothing else that you ask for. It cannot be a natural cure if you do not pair it with the body, as I have said and will say even better, with which you pair it at the beginning. Assemble the Ovec gifts so that he can create and form something similar. And what you put together is an elixir. For, when you have thus assembled the white or red sulfur with its body, it will never be left after opening until it has converted everything into it. It will be on fire in sun or moon. And for this reason, when you want to ferment, mix the sulfur with the body so that everything is leavened. For the leaven of the body returns our suffering to its first right nature and its own right color and flavor in every way. And so everything will be left white to white and red to red. And this is evident, because if you add silver leaven to red sulfur, it will return to the nature of the ferment or leaven, but not for that reason to its color. And for this, there are some yellow beaks who are too light peas, so that they put moon leaven instead of golden leaven. And for this, it is too light and greatly lacking in peas, especially when the elixir is found on Jovis or Venus. Because when he is resting on Saturn, he is more peaty. And, when he is on Mercury, he is still a pea grinder and the best of all. Please understand what I say and why I say it. For no philosopher has ever spoken thus as I speak to you. Do not therefore put the ferment of red sulfur with white sulfur, do not put the ferment of red sulfur with white sulfur. And be the bodies, of which you will leaven, purge with cement and with ashes each according to its nature, the gold with ciment, and the silver with ashes. And from these two make your ferment or your leaven white to white, and red to red, for there is no other leaven on earth except ices. 2. Body. Now I will say that the pea of leaven must overcome the pea of sulfur. For this reason in all fermentation must be noted certain peas in white or red, so that the large and sovereign part of the volatile sulfur does not overcome the sovereign part of the fixed body. In another way the bond of the spousal partner turns around in the light of the unfixed spirit. And for this our master Plato says, a small quantity of sulfur is deposited on a large quantity of body so that it can have power over this quantity, it converts it all into powder, and the color of this powder will be the color of the body on whose spirit will be rested. Now I will declare all the details and the way of assembling it. And for this reason, because sulfur cannot enter into bodies, if it is not moiensome yaw which makes the marriage between sulfur and leaven, in all dispensation you put first, according to Avicenna, the earth, for this quarrad is lower for its weight, and that is to say the leaven. Secondly you will put the air, because it is impregnated with the yeast, and fourthly you will put the fire, because it is imprisoned with the air. However, do not set fire to the white elixir, because it is made up of 3 elements which alone have no fire. And the red elixir is completed with all 4. Appropriate therefore your ferment, that is to say your leaven before its fermentation, in such a way that it is made calcined powder, dissolved and indurated. And if you don't do it that way, the work doesn't mean anything. But I will say I benefit from the work of the ministry. If you do not unscrew our stone by the 4 elements, it cannot assemble well with the body. And if you do not put this body into the elixir, the spirit will not be able to bitter the body. And if you do not mix the ferment with the elixir, it will not be able to flow into the body which must be transmuted, thus as it should. And if you don't sublimate everything you put in the elixir, it will be airy gold or silver. And if you don't prepare the bodies you want to convert, they won't be able to withstand the fire very well. And if you do not harden everything and soften, it will not be possible to open gold or silver. And for this, the lime, which is put in the elixir, must be well sublimated so that it is better simple and lively. Therefore, when you want to project the elixir, you will make lime from the material from which the body will be on which you want to cast the elixir. And put with this lime the leaven also made in powder. If for gold, be leaven of gold. Say for money, be made of money. Because espousing, or espousing, this is not something else, not that you assemble and add the ferment with the body that I said. And the elixir is the powder that is made from the stone. And the body and the ferment must be powdered 2 or 3 times. And so many times as you will sublimate any body with these compositions of sublimated spirit, each time you will gain in the projection 100 peas. Inasmuch then as you have made your body lighter, inasmuch as it will be lighter, if it can be laid a pea out of 100, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000, and 10,000 out of 100, 1,000,000 out of 1,000 infinitus. Or I will say the materials which are affixed to make or accomplish the elixir on Mercury by a tablet and on Venus. Ferment of refined moon lunidure, medicine fuse. The elixir on Mercury prepared. Mercury the sulfur of the stone, fix. Perfect medicine yaw de Mercury perfect medicine. On Mercury and oil mercurial, earth on Venus. Endure and moisten calx of Venus. And sublimate moon powder in place of leaven, adding. And we want medicine to be on Jovis instead of the lime of Venus, metescox of Jovis. And in the same way made of Saturn, you want medicine to be on Saturn, and also made of Mars. Now I will say how you must keep the quantity of each one. As you wish to prepare our stone, know about water, air, earth and fire in it. For when it is calcined, there will be in it bitterness, less heat, less cold and less dampness. And when she is paired, there will be less heat in her, less dryness, less dampness and less cold. Therefore, when you want to convert it, know that it will lose its first nature in each of the 4 regimes. For when it is dissolved by the first regime, it returns to bitter coldness, and less dampness, and less heat and less dryness. And when it washes itself by the second regimen it returns to less dampness, less cold, less heat and less dryness. And when it is reduced by the third regime, it returns to harsh drought, to less heat, to less cold and to less dampness. And when it settles, returns to less heat, less humidity, less cold. And for this, let us fix ourselves on the hot and moist mercurium stone, prepared, in addition to the one in front of its dissolution. Understand then this reversion, of the stone the difference, and for what it is done and in what way. Everything that is changed, or it is changed for the better, or for the worse, or in resemblance to its first matter. If it changes into its same likeness it is no good, if it changes into something worse it is damage, if it changes into a better one it is a great profit. So turn your stone from good to better and the elixir will be complete. Now I will say how you can correct and amend your work if it is not done to its point. At the first movement of the stone you will expect 3 main colors. There the first is black, the second white and the third red. Therefore, be careful and diligent that the work does not become red in the face of its darkness and is not lost by the combustion of its tincture. Correct and amend your fault by cooking everything together in its white light until everything is returned to blackness by burial in fiends. Because this decoction removes all combustion, or arsure, and restores lost moisture. And this is done by solution, not by the flow of fountain, but by the flow of mercury the flow is accomplished. And also example, it is accomplished by solution of light fusion in non-fusible things, so that more aptly one can have ingredients and can alter, it is converted with the complement of working. And know that we calcine the medicine so that it can dissolve more lightly. And we dissolve it so that it can better form, fix and melt, and so that the body can make a better impression or ingest. And light fusion let us give to medicine with reiteration of sublimation of non-flammable hopes on isulks, that is to know of air and yaw of non-fixed mercury with reiteration of solution of non-melting medicine. However, it is a good option to give fusion to non-dissolving medicine. First you dissolve the body of the white or red ferment, and also dissolve the medicine. I only dye all parts of this dissolvent in yaw, but no parts of it. Because the solution to this is nothing else, but that it can turn into moist. And let the sulphureous salts go away. And from this dissolution be imbue the lime that you have made of the body, which you would like to convert into sun or moon. And do this until it melts on the hot lamina. And by this means it is necessary that the medicine be mixed and melted so that it is well ingredient and input with the complement of perfect alteration or transmutation of gold or silver. And if the metal, which must be converted by medicine, is not of sufficient color, either no longer put medicine with it, and if it has too much color, that is to say to the sun, because the moon cannot be too white, or use less medicine or more transmuting metal. And if medicine does not remain good, it is due to lack of fixation. Succurs by repetition of solution and coagulation or by repetition of sublimation of the non-fixed part on the fixed part. And if they are done with great difficulty, it is by default of insuration. Succor then with the oil of the stone, letting it dry, drop by drop, over a light fire until it melts like wax. And know that, when you surround yourself, mix more with the hot and moist thing than with the cold and dry thing, and when you stand, you mix with the cold and dry thing more than with the hot and moist thing. Please understand what I say, because the perfection of this work is only a right mutation of nature. Now I will tell you here how you should keep the peas from the powders. All things are under 6 defined terms and under certain dispositions. For that matter. And measure quantity in any work to be done. Therefore, keep in mind the conjunction of elixir and use it wisely. And know how much you must know of air and air, of earth and fire. For if you do not know this, your work will be worth nothing. For if you put more or less earth than is necessary, what you put there beyond the right mortifies the soul and the spirit, and is less too moist for the soul and the soul. Mind and cannot be fixed. And also if he had too much air or poi, he would seem damaged. Also if there was too much fire, it would seem like a shame, because it would burn. And if there were some, it would not be able to dry up all the moisture that must dry up. Always do not set fire to white, but I speak generally here about all elixirs. For this reason, a certain point is acceptable in each thing so that too much drought or too much moisture administered does not corrupt the work. For this reason, the leaven according to the growth of the pea is always reusable, no offense of failure will harm, but that always some pea you will get again. And note here that the ferment or leaven which mixes with sulfur is called earth, and that which rises from the earth by way of sublimation are called yaw and air. Therefore, when you assemble the elements so that they can better attach to the composition of the white elixir, put more earth than each of the other elements. In another way the earth could not fix the mind, but would go up in smoke with the mind. However, isoplus is made according to the right reason and measure of adequacy. Example to better understand what I'm saying, if you want to put a pea and a half in air and 0.2 peas, it must be 3 peas minus a quarter of the earth, and of the leaven of the earth be 3 tans as it is once white sulfur. Example to better understand what I said, if it says white sulfur a pea, it must be 3 peas of leaven. And as much as there is of air and water, so much must there be of earth, that is to say 3 peas less a quarter. Again I will say it so that you can hear it better. To elixir the moon take 3 peas of the earth less a quarter and 2 peas of the air and a pea and a half of the air, and the elixir is complete. And to the red elixir, as the sun is hotter than the moon, must be 2 peas of the earth and 3 peas of the earth, and so much of the air, and a pea and a half of fire, that is say red sulfur. And the pea of the yaw is the moyen. Because if there was too much fire and too much fire, the fire would burn out. And on the contrary it is air, because air nourishes fire just as air nourishes the earth. And the fire lives from the air and the air lives from the luminosity of the yaw, and the yaw lives from the luminosity of the earth. Therefore fix the eye on the earth so that the air can then be fixed on the eye. For, if you have killed the yaw, all the other elements are dead. However, know that the tree cannot be fixed without the earth, because the earth is its body, and no fruit can be raised without a body, as its verses explain. Consurgit nullus unquam sine corpore fructus. In quo dum moritur sanctum fructum der furter. No one ever rises without a body, in which, while he is dying, he is said to give holy fruit. For you know well that, as the earth is fixed, it retains the earth and fixes the other elements. And the yaw, which is cold and moist, circles and surrounds the earth, and constrains it, and oniize. Because the cold and the damp are restrictive of all dryness. However, the moist one sometimes takes an impression and sometimes leaves it, and the dry one takes an impression and sometimes leaves it. Therefore, as the moist and the dry are soaked together, the dry becomes hope for the moist by the continuation of the parts and slight impression or fixation. And acquire the moistness of the dry so that it holds a firmer impression and can endure all fire. And for this, the moist defends the siac from his own action, and the siac defend the moist of its flexibility. The air surrounds the air, clarifies the earth and holds it so that it is more apt for extension and fusion. The fire dyes, subtleties and rubifies the whole composition, and mixes the air and confirms it, and corroborates, and nevertheless destroys the coldness of the earth and the water so that the whole composition returns to a certain equality of noble complexion. Grievance, that is to say the world and the earth, more ardent to fix and to eat. And the light element, namely air and fire, burns more to fusion and tincture. Therefore do not eat without drinking, nor drink without eating, but drink and lie, and eat and drink, one after another according to reason. For too much heat makes the body drier than it should, and too much heat makes the body more moist than it should, and too much dryness makes the body stiffer and harder than it should, and too great dampness makes the body softer than it should be. So don't be too wide or too narrow. But keep the right points with this unique balance complexion which makes all the fun. Now I said how you must milk the sulfur from our stone and the proof from the mystery, and how the defects must be amended, and how you must keep the peas of the composition in making your elixir. For this reason I now want to say and teach how one should make his elixir, and how one should fix it. And since we have the sulfur, which we have asked for so much, we can make such an atonement with it, by which all bodies will be resurrected, and when they are resurrected if we will then give as much gold and as much silver as we want. Alcheminate and pare the bodies before you put the soul into them. For the body, even if it is washed, does not retain the spirit. Therefore, we must eat it after eating it, and not eat it after drinking it. In other way you would make your stomach too moist and would not be able to develop dryness. Therefore, fix well, and mix well, and stick well, and you will have all the mystery and understanding in all your operations. And truly whoever knows how to sublimate can go to a light fixing, mixing, and tincture. For all sublimation done to the point is the manner and the main key of all work, and a good sublimator is half a good master. Now let us make our holy anointing or name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. Target 3 parts of very pure moon commutantly filed with which double it with very pure white mercury by grinding everything together hard in a mortar of porphyre, until the mercury has drunk all the filing. And be done like buzz so that nothing of the file can be found. Afterwards wash very well with distilled vinegar and prepared common salt, until the vinegar is clear and clean. After salting gently and drying the fish over a fire. And when you have done that, take a part sulfur sublimated and frozen white, and grind everything together until it is returned as a body. Afterwards encircle this with part of its aura, and sublimate everything by invigorating and strengthening the fire from degree to degree, until everything that is volatile sublimates. And then, when everything is cold, milk it out. And what will be sublimated, return to his feces with the other part of his white yaw by grinding and soaking and mixing until it is made into a paste. Afterwards put everything back to sublimate. So continually repeat the constriction and the imbibition, the assation and the sublimation, always vigorating the fire until it is fixed from the surface to the double of the earth and does not sublimate. And return every tenth that which will sublimate on that which will ultimately remain fixed, until everything remains fixed. Because the sulfur of the fixed stone, as it is freezing and frozen, naturally freezes its mercury by repetition of frequent sublimation on it. Example of this is earth and yaw. For thus as the water mixes with the earth drinks it by its dryness and makes it return to species by its depreciation, and if it pretends to bind by its grossness. For every dry thing naturally drinks and appetizes moist things thus as it is continued in its parts. And for this, it is necessary that the experimenter of this science fully understands the forces of nature, and that he is strongly inclined to them, because nature is sufficient for you and for him in all things, to which there is in him gives way to its perfection. And is most wise and accustomed to the insuration of his body, of which ensuration the solicitude, or the continuation, not to the point of end. Please ensure that you wisely dispose of nature from without, for it is sufficient enough to open from within and move towards perfection. And nevertheless the movements of him are all adherent and inclined to a path and an order and a manner more better and more certain than one thinks or cogitates. And for this, delay and preparation must be in the hands of philosophers. And the nature of the movement will not be able to pass if it is not prevented by any opposite. For it has certain terms to impregnate, and to enter, and to nourish, and to open. For this reason, when you have the earth thick, wait for its burial, and when she is engorged, feed her until she can tolerate the fire, and then you can use the medicine. Now I will say how it must return the air to the white elixir. When the blade is well fixed with the earth, grind the earth again with rust to soak part of its air. And begin to sublimate by first making a light fire, and then making a stronger fire until by continued repetition of sublimation everything is fixed. So you will make a strong fire one day and one night, and after the second day you will make a stronger fire, and on the third day with the night even stronger. This is how you want to melt copper. And thus the air is fixed with the water in the earth. Because nature enjoys nature. And nature contains nature. And nature teaches nature to fight against fire. And so the plucked bird is kept from the unplucked from top to bottom. Now I will say how one should surround his white elixir. When your sublimatory is cold, take an ounce of the crystalline lamina found at the bottom of the sublimatory. And incense perfectly with the Durain insuration, tasting drop by drop in a Tayun Crusoe, on light fire the dictated ounce of your medicine with its white oil on set until it melts thus like sire without smoke. And then sit on the hot lamina, if it comes out lightly like the encircled wax is. Do not return to its encasement by lying on its white oil drop by drop until it melts like smokeless wax. And this is the commandment of all philosophers. For as you have fixed by sublimation part of the pure and clear earth, repeat your sublimation of the other non-fixed part on the fixed part until everything is fixed. Afterwards try on the fire if it will melt well. Because then have you repeatedly repeated your sublimation on the fixed part until it melts quickly like smokeless wax. Afterwards, remove everything from the fire. And let it cool. And keep this in a vessel of cere or ivory or crystal. For it is a completed elixir, and taken that it has no effect, so it is incompressible to any value and incomparable which can convert any body diminished into infinite moon. Projection. Cast the sovereign medicine a pea on 1,000 parts of white mercury or common salt prepared and with distilled vinegar, and it will freeze into a very fine moon better than mine. So, if on imperfect bodies a pea is placed on medicine on a millet of ice, the moon transforms them into a very true one. But I yawned for you in the manner of composition of this very noble elixir, completed my sermon, to which elixir can all threads of philosophy without doubt by me directly to come. So become accustomed to all these regimental manners and use them. Because the flower of truth of the right effect on the nail you will find it. Not by lee, not by adventure, by miracle, but by art is made and operated. So open up in whatever way you wish, because other than this advice I cannot give you any other. Now I will tell you how to compose the red elixir. In this same way red elixir is made. But for each white thing you put something red. And in place of the moon's image you will put the soul's image, and first rubified mercury or the fire of the stone. For in every red work nothing enters except that it is red. So as in all white things, nothing enters except white things. Therefore, in the preparation of solar medicine, red sulfur is added by way of fixing in 3 batches of its leaven combined by way of solution or sublimation with great repetition until the non-fixed part of mercury remains completely fixed with the part fixed. Because the way of fixing and solution is made by reiteration of sublimation of the non-fixed part on the fixed part, by assembled and added machine and held. And when the medicine has taken 3 parts of its red skin in such a way, then it will be soaked with red oil by a light soak of rust, and then put it to sublimate each time until everything is well fixed. You will place it one day, or one night, on a standard fire so that the medicine purifies better and the air settles better in it. Then take your medicine and place it in a crucible over a light fire with its red oil, letting it drip drop by drop until it melts like smokeless wax. And be made whole a body being and penetrating, perfundant, and tingent, and monent. Projectio medicine ad aurum. Give a part of ice and medicine on the moon or mercury washed with salt and vinegar. And it will freeze into a very fine and very true sun in every examination, much better than that of the mine. And for this, the philosopher says that the gold and silver of this stone surpasses in goodness the gold and silver of mining in all its virtues and in all its properties, and says that gold and silver of them are not half gold and silver common. For in their gold and their silver is added great addition in tincture and too great perseverance to the fire by the properties of the operations and of the various utilities to expel and to agitate without all infirmity. In what way should the multiplication of serdicted medicine be carried out? Or as is he doing medicine red and white and said the way of the projection of it? Now you monsterae I feed it and the manner in which it must multiply. When you have fixed your sovereign medicine, and it will be well surrounded so that it melts like wax, you will dissolve your medicine in its layer of mercury, white and red, until everything is done clear. And then freeze it in a light decoction. And then surround it with its oil, drop by drop, over a light fire until it flows like wax. And certainly know that it will be doubled in virtue and in projection, that is to say, polka dot on point 2 mile. And if you steal it, when it is dissolved in know certainly that it will double its power and its virtue in 100, that is to say that a pea of this medicine will be worth 100 of the first medicine. And for this, I will tell you better the way of multiplication so that you can hear it better when you open it. You will dissolve each white and red medicine in its place by burial in fiends. Afterwards you will separate the elements by distillation, first retaining the water, and afterward the oil, and leaving the earth below. Return the tube to the earth by sublimation until it is completely flat and well fixed with the earth. Afterward soak the earth with its oil and its dye until everything is fixed and melts like smokeless wax. The projection of multiplied medicine. Drop a pea of this medicine on any body you want, and you will find that its tincture will be multiplied 100 times more than it was before. And if a part of it first converts 100 parts of each body, at the second time it will convert 1,000, and at the third time it will convert 10,000, and at the fourth time 1,000,000 into true suffice and benefit. And for this, you must note that the more the medicine is dissolved, sublimated and frozen, the better and more abundantly it opens. Because in each dissolution you acquire in lydis or projection. So don't worry about repeating the solution, sublimation and coagulation. Because by such mysteries is best digested, united and fixed medicine, the virtue of which can be opened more perfectly. Now I will say how you should understand sublimation and dissolution. Don't worry as I say that you must make the solution in the way that the elixir at all returns to you. But I say you must steal it as far as you can. And divide its parts, which are conjunct, by fixing by turning its dry into moist and the large into simple. And these operations were only found to be useful to the work of solution. And for this, the conjunction of the bodies with the hopes is done with the dissolution and with the manual subtilization that the bodies do not have to perform. This is a matter of sublimation, so that they can be better assembled and added to the hopes. And their subtlety is dissolution in ya, because the dissolution treats the stone of power has made, for this because it makes it at all be useful. And for this, when the bodies are well separated, the hopes after all universally unite, and no time after by any work of machine will they separate one from the other. And confirmation of hopes is made with the bodies, and the bodies are made soiled so that it can retain the hopes. For this reason, who can prepare the body well with the first subtlety the end of the desired work perfectly assured. Because in the conjunction of the hopes with which the bodies must be the whole intention of the opening. And conjunction of these this fact with that the bodies, when the bodies are well nourished in a manner of spirit. And the bodies are made equipped with the hopes by dissolution, constriction and assation. Please understand what I have said, because everything is useful and profitable. And if you cannot hear me, repeat the lesson so that you can better hear me. Therefore look and hear and open according to the understanding. For everything I have said comes from the tongue of truth. But there is no other way of operation that you decline. Why, if you are not disappointed, your work will not be deprived of the fruit. However, if you cannot understand my true writings, do not blame me, but your slanderous ignorance. For you are unfortunate, like one to whom God never gave any good. Now I will generally tell you how to project the multiplied elixir. How bad it is to melt 1,000 parts together, when you want to make the projection. If you do it like this, take 100 parts of mercury with salt and vinegar well washed, and put it in a crucible on the fire, and, when it begins to heat up, take a part of your elixir, and put it on the mercury, and all medicine will be made on other washed mercury. Afterwards take another part of this frozen medicine, and place it on 100 parts of mercury washed and heated in crucible, and all medicine will be made again on other mercury. Afterwards take a part of ice cream recently frozen, and legit it on 100 parts of washed mercury, and it will be made of the whole gold or silver in any judgment, according to whether the first elixir is white or red. And this book is the Rosary of the Philosophers, which I have briefed on their books and their secrets, in which there is nothing superfluous, nothing diminished, but that which is only necessary to the complement of our perfect work in infinity true suffice and unification, depending on whether the elixir is combined. It also has the virtue, effectiveness over all other medicines of healing and healing all infirmity, whether you are hot or ill or cold, for this reason because this sovereign medicine is based on the occult and its own nature. For it preserves all health of the human body, and strengthens, and replenishes virtue, both of old and young, and all egret and sickness lies in the body of every person, declines and destroys all venom, and of the body things dry up, and spiritual things dissolve, and keeps them all worldly and clean. And if the illness, whatever it may be, lasts a month, this precious medicine heals it in a day, and if the illness lasts for a year, it ends in 0.7 days, and if the disease is old for a long time, our medicine cures it in a month. And for this medicine which is by right sovereign over all other medicines must be more sovereignly investigated. Because he who has it has incomparable treasure. Now I will say that I will recapitulate the whole mystery as I found it briefly in the books of the philosophers. Reiterate therefore all the regiments of all this sovereign work. According to the requirement of their sermon, with which all their things suffer, it now remains briefly to recapitulate the ministry under the accomplished brevity of the sermon. I therefore say that the understanding of all this sovereign work only begins with the stone which is struck among the chapters. And with that great instance of work be diligent the work of sublimation on that of the first degree until it is well cleaned and cleaned of its corrupt impurity. Afterwards, as you have dissolved it, either use its addition, white or red, until the last material of the substance becomes. And then it becomes volatile. And finally be fixed with all the ways of fixing until it can be pushed back to the harshness of the fire being and persevering. After the fixed stone, with the non-fixed part kept and reserved by way of solution and sublimation, make it volatile, and after the volatile fixed, and the fixed still volatile, and again the volatile fixed until it flows and alters in complement to true solifice and unification. And in this is accomplished the arch chain and the precious secret over all the other secrets of this world, very great secret, and inescapable price, and sovereign treasure of all the philosophists. For this reason, most honorable and sovereign Lord, have yourself exercised in this work with great assiduation and persistence, and with great day-to-day cogitation, if you wish to be born of sovereign philosophy. Because in this way you will find the elixir completed and in other ways not. And for this I have given you the manners of our stone in this book with its completed sermon, not under enigmatic, not under the appearance of parables, but under plenary order of parliament, to your royal, very powerful, and very glorious crown, of all others sovereign and frank by illustration regale majesty, the little cleric of it prepares. Almighty gods and our Creator first testify and the books of the Philosophers, to all we know nothing to be contained of this art better and more perfectly that this is subscribed brevity, corrupted, although its wise hearers are quite long and prolix. And you others therefore, natural and fruit of philosophy, who are there delivered under a kind of shadow of the so-called royal crown, please keep in your hands and hide, in no way to anyone manifest, do not fall into the hands of impieters offering, not yawning. For it contains fully and comprehensively the sovereign of the secrets of all philosophers. For such and such a great Marguerite es non's worthes is not large, as it is only the gift of the sovereign God, which he gives to whom he pleases, and the bone to whom he pleases. For this therefore, brothers naturals and fruit certis, keep isolibel, flower of flowers, and rouse on all rouses, saving of the soul and joy of the body, files estins of philosophy secretly manifesting and reserent the rosary of them affin that by better law may be said and written in the feral table of the ancient wise men. The very high conservative be guard of your royal majesty by supposing your enemies.